Sonic, being the speedy boy that he is, has done a decent job in recent years returning to what made him so great in the early 90s. A hedgehog with the capability to run faster than the speed of sound, and enticing players with the prospect of using that speed to blitz through levels faster and faster multiple times in hopes of getting a better final score at the end of it all. What if we were to switch that up though? Well, slightly. What if the polish that Sonic Team has been trying their best to put at the forefront of their recent games was used to concoct something different? Something unique? Something strangely familiar? There's a blast from the past brewing, and this time, we're going to make sure that Sonic Team manages to land the perfect pour. Let's talk about it. Within the first 2 decades of his life, Sonic the Hedgehog went down a number of different paths as a means to, let's just say, expand his palette. You had a Mario Party clone, a God of War clone, a Final Fantasy clone, you get the idea. All of these games were either not seen favorably at all, or only parts of them were deemed as acceptable amongst fans. The main complaint, and by far the most civil when it comes to the many escapades of one Sonic the Hedgehog, is that the identity of the blue blur was lost in almost all of these. You'll have people on both sides of the fence defending the good parts of these games and completely thrashing the others, but all of that is subjective. Arguably, the games that were very obvious attempts at not having Sonic's identity as the main appeal, i.e. Sonic Shuffle and Sonic Chronicles, get a pass only due to the fact that they were dives into completely different genres, but them not being the best games is a completely different conversation. The concept of, hey, let's have Sonic play like this instead of that, is an art that's been lost to time. We've been stuck with the boost formula and boost adjacent formulas for about 16 years now, and no, we're not counting Sonic Boom. But what if there was an opportunity to bring back side projects that have the polish of a mainline game? The chance to have something outside of the typical kart racer every few years. To truly visualize this in the games that have the highest possibility of coming to fruition, we'll have to lay a few ground rules down. Nothing too egregious, but they are important for the sake of not repeating the transgressions of Sonic's past endeavors. The guidelines are as follows. 1. The core gameplay of these spin-off genres must be in line with what Sonic was built for, to be fast and stylish. 2. There has to be a replayability factor to these genres, with a focus on getting a better score. Too often, as of recent, have Sonic games been stuck relegated to super easy ranking systems that even first-timers can S-rank without too much thought or intention behind what they're doing. 3. Lastly and most importantly, there has to be some variety within these games and genres. This can be different characters, unlockable moves that don't become useless after one instance, etc. With all that being said, I've devised 3 different genres and games that perfectly encapsulate all of what I just mentioned and the specific games for what I personally consider to be the best examples of them. Without further ado, I'd like everyone to get acquainted with the Warriors franchise, almost any 2D roguelike game, and the game that's going to kick off this breakdown, Devil May Cry. God of War was never the franchise for Sonic to take inspiration from. Not saying that this series is bad, but the 2 characters of Kratos and Sonic are way too drastically different in tone, personality, and most definitely core gameplay philosophy. Yes, in God of War you can combo enemies and receive bigger rewards, but the whole point of that game, aside from the obvious, is to be methodical in how you approach enemies and look for attack patterns so that you can appropriately choose the correct reaction. In Dante and DMC's case, you can still do that, but you look a hell of a lot cooler doing it and can low-key smack your head on the controller while still pulling off some sick-looking moves. Not to mention that these 2 right here are the same person. I mean, just in different species. Cocky? Check. Sauce? Check. Brooding twin brother or lookalike who they love to annoy? Check. Just imagine an action-adventure hack-and-slash Devil May Cry Sonic game, somewhat akin to what the 5th entry in that series was able to achieve and pull off with 3, technically 4, characters. A crew where everyone is able to pull their own weight, has unique gameplay styles, and equally have moments that lets them shine at what they do best. It wouldn't have to be so suggestive like the DMC franchise can be known for, but having a fully fleshed out world with playable characters and NPCs that makes said world feel alive and full of charisma is yet just another way that Sonic Team can give the masses what they want. Representation for their favorites. As for the playable characters, we could honestly just have it be that 06 remake that a lot of us want. On the other hand though, if we were to have it follow even closer in the footsteps that DMC 5 left, we introduce a whole new character into the fray. Better yet, have this potentially be the game where 1 or 2 of the IDW cast gets introduced. For those not too familiar with the Devil May Cry series, here's your gameplay loop spark notes. In every combat sequence, you are graded on how stylish and unique your combos are. The better you are at weaving in new moves to combo enemies, the better score and grading you get once the encounter is done. Using the same move too many times results in poor grades and at the end of the level, lackluster rewards that you can't do much with. Not only is your grading based on these combo thresholds, but also how fast you complete the levels. Of course, you wouldn't be completing them as fast as a Sonic level, but there is incentive in finding the most optimal way to deal with the various types of enemies. For the premise of the game, we can go wherever we want with this. We'll take inspiration from DMC3. Eggman has somehow erected a building that is believed to be the Sonic universe's equivalent to the Tower of Babel. Sonic and a small team consisting of Tails, Amy, and Knuckles go to investigate, only to find out that Team Dark, being led by Rouge, are on a similar mission by order of Gun. Lastly, we'll have our new character from the comics, or whoever you all in the comments believe should be here, be awoken by Cream the Rabbit after saving her, who was in the epicenter of the tower's emergence. These two and another companion could be linked to the tower in some way and set off to get answers on what's going on as well. When it comes to the combat, Sonic Frontiers had some of it, but it was very button mashy and repetitive if I am to put my personal bias aside. We don't want that in this game at all. There should be an emphasis on trying to get the highest possible point score, and to do so would require that you mix in innovation with speed, exactly what Sonic the Hedgehog is all about. The combat party doesn't stop there though, since we're putting a new spin on an old formula. A lot of high-profile franchises have gotten the Warriors treatment, and it's not limited to just games either. Gundam, Fire Emblem, The Legend of Zelda, Persona, One Piece, and the list goes on and on. Seeing as it's not just one entertainment medium that has gotten a Warriors game, why don't we go ahead and introduce Sonic into the fray as well? The best way to think of Warriors games, or Musou games as they're also known as, is like the Werehog from Unleashed, but not as stiff. Warriors games go with the premise of using flashy moves to take out hordes of enemies, and consistently making your way towards an objective as a means to regain control of an area. A quite literal war of attrition, if you will. Taking a step back and looking throughout Sonic's history, you start to wonder why something of this caliber hadn't already come to be. I mean, think about it. You smash dozens of robots in every Sonic game, and in some of those games, combat is a heavy focus, while boosting into said robots is another. If you're going to lead into the former, why not have it be fully realized and arcade-like as it should be for a Sonic game? The gameplay loop for the Warriors style of games is as follows. 1. Start off with a small force of troops and fight your way through a couple of groups of enemies. Eventually, take back a stronghold, gaining more troops, and linking up with a few more characters that you can switch between if you so choose. As you progress, the mobs become increasingly difficult with larger enemy groups, more organized fronts, and even bosses. The best part of these Warriors games is that, much like the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, the importance of getting certain objectives done within the time limit are often put front and center. You can lose whole squadrons of allies if your gameplay isn't up to snuff, and oftentimes, you'll be forced as to whether you want to help Ally X or Ally Y first. Here is where the strategy comes in. Do you prioritize, in the case that this is a Sonic game of course, assisting Cream, who can heal your entire squad after that boss you just fought has everyone in the red, or assisting Knuckles that has a special move excellent for trapping large groups of pawns for a certain amount of time while you handle the arena boss. On the subject of allies, these Warrior games, particularly the licensed IP ones, have boatloads of characters that you can choose from. I think the first Hyrule Warriors has about 30 characters to play as, each offering a different game plan on how they can best execute the mission objective. That number right there covers almost everyone's top 10 Sonic characters list, and some joke picks as well. With cinematic ultimate-like moves and a moveset catered to each individual character, this Sonic Warriors has the potential to be the highest selling Sonic spin-off game of all time. Matter of fact, toss in some co-op local and online play, a wargame 2v2 mode to see which team can conquer the most land in a set time limit, and a decent yet fun story, and I think we're putting up prime Kobe numbers for total sales. The story can also be anything you fancy, but my vote is for an adaptation of the first arc of IDW. Would you have an original story for this game, or have it follow a specific plot from any of the different media outlets that we have for Sonic? Keep your seatbelt buckled though, because we got one more turn before coming back home, and it's so obvious that it hurts. Picture this. The ever-loved pixel art of the Sonic Advance series. Acrobatic and combat moves deriving from both the former and Sonic Battle. An endless pit of replayability since every time you jump in, the generated worlds choose to offer you a brand new experience. The pitch for a Sonic the Hedgehog roguelike is one that I'm both surprised and not surprised at its lack of existence for a multitude of reasons. By their nature, roguelike games are supposed to be obstacles that keep you on your feet at every turn, as the chances that you run into the same layout of enemies and hazards is pretty rare. This poses a problem due to the fact that in our guideline, Sonic games pride themselves on being a series of levels constructed in a manner that repetition and exposure to what the most optimal path may be are best practice. On the flip side of that, this is quite obviously a money printing machine for fans that desire a much harder challenge than what's been given to us over the past couple of years. Just thinking about the fan names for certain layouts, the best gear to enter a run with, and the overall community building possibilities that arise from just the idea of something of this caliber is mind-boggling. The beauty of the GBA series of games art style coming back would be the cherry on top as well, and would fit right in with the genre of roguelikes as many of them use pixel designs to great effect. This is again yet another case of having various playable characters be a no-brainer. It of course possibly have to be limited to specific characters as there aren't many of these games that have a 15+ size roster, but I think a solid 4 to 5 would do the trick. As for the gameplay and story, if we're to focus on the former very quickly, it'd be your traditional fare of navigating through a level, using your character's specific combat and movement options to rip through enemies and the level alike, and finding upgrades along the way to help you on your journey. In true roguelike fashion though, you'd better hope that you make it past the first area in one piece. Otherwise, all of that progress and upgrades are out of here. To make things a bit more appealing to the new players though, let's also set up the characters with a meter that can be built and act as a screen nuke of sorts that assists with making the adventure a bit easier. Not too easy though. In terms of story, how does the re-emergence of Eggman Land sound? Eggy has somehow rebuilt his dream park with rooms and corridors that are never the same and ever changing, so that no two visitors ever have identical experiences. It's our hero's job to get to the center of the park, tearing down any attractions that stand in their way, and hitting the park with a closed permanently sign. Sonic may not have always had the best history when it comes to dipping his toes into other genres, but for a lot of people, those risks that he embarked on are what introduced them to a plethora of other amazing games and genres. It's important to realize though, should Sonic Team ever decide to go back to the various gameplay styles again, that the core identity of Sonic the Hedgehog has to always be front and center. That fact is so crucial that when they got it right, it led to one of the most important games in the Hedgehog's career.